Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this program called Our Moments with God, where I try to share with you for my own reflections and for yours on the daily Mass readings with the hope that it helps us in our spiritual journey and in our search and friendship with Jesus and with God. And before I proceed, may I please request you to kindly subscribe to this channel and also press the bell icon. And if you like the video, please also share it with others. Today is the great feast of the Pentecost. So I wish you all a very happy feast of Pentecost. And you see at the back of me, we have nice flowers on to celebrate today's feast of the Pentecost. But before I proceed even further, do you know the first reading today begins by saying, when the time for Pentecost was fulfilled, they were all in one place together. So what does that mean? First of all, it means that the feast of Pentecost already existed before the pouring down of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles. This was a Jewish feast, and Pentecost actually in Greek means 50th. So this is the 50th day for us after the resurrection of Jesus. And for the Jewish, it was after the feast of the great feast of Passover. It was the 50th day and they had their own celebration. So let us be clear that the Pentecost is also taken from the old Jewish festival which was celebrated on the 50th day. So what happens on this day? They were Jews, the disciples and people around. So they were gathered in one room. But it suddenly says they were all in one place together. And suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind and filled the entire house in which they were. Then there appeared to them tongues as of fire, which parted and came to rest on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in different tongues as the Spirit enabled them to proclaim. This is part of the first reading, from the Acts of the Apostles. The Gospel also speaks about they were all gathered in one room. It doesn't specifically mention it was the day of Pentecost, but they were all gathered in one room. But it also says, for the fear of Jews. This is a very important sentence in the Gospel. What were they afraid of, the Jews? You see, 50 days before that, they had crucified and put to death their master. And remember, Peter was so afraid that he even denied Jesus 3 times. And the other disciples also had disappeared from the scene. They were so afraid. And now, though they were afraid at that time, they have come together. They're still trying to find out and understand all that has happened. They have not yet grasped what has happened, but they're still afraid. And then there is suddenly an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Now, because the Holy Spirit is spirit, it is not a person in flesh and blood, but it is a spirit, Holy Spirit. That's why it takes the form of tongues and fire that descended upon the apostles. And suddenly this whole fear of the Jews that they had disappears. They suddenly get courage to go out to the whole world and preach the good news. Remember, last Sunday we celebrated the feast of the Ascension. And as Jesus was ascending into heaven, he had given them this mandate: go out to the whole world and preach the good news. But even that time, they heard these words, but they had not yet organized themselves, or they did not have the courage, or they did not really know how to go about it. But it is on the day of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit comes upon them, they suddenly get courage, they get wisdom, as also the second reading of today from the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians and the Galatians. We have a choice. Either we can take the reading from the book of Corinthians, or letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, or to the Galatians. And both of them speak about the various gifts of the Holy Spirit. It is one Spirit, but it is a Spirit which gives you wisdom, it gives you courage. There are several gifts of the Holy Spirit. And what does Paul say? There's all these gifts are meant to benefit you, to proclaim the good news, for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of the church. And this we shall never forget, because this is what the apostles showed by their preaching. They did not preach for themselves. They had no interest of their own. All their interest, their total dedication, and their total passion was only to preach the risen Lord, who of course had died, but who had risen from the dead, and who had brought the good news. And this good news, Jesus knew, had to be taken to the rest of the world. Filled with the Holy Spirit, it had to spread to the whole world. And therefore, the apostles went about without fear or favor and preached the good news to all and sundry, everybody. And they went to a long distance to proclaim this word. St. Thomas the Apostle and St. Bartholomew went even as far as India, or if you would like to say, came as far as India to proclaim the good news of the Lord. Therefore, one important thing for us on the feast of the Pentecost, it is good for us to celebrate Pentecost with flowers and with decorations and with singing the hymns to the Holy Spirit, but that's not enough. What needs to be done is the mandate given to us on the feast of the Ascension: go out into the whole world and preach the good news. And where do you get the wherewithals or the courage and the wisdom and right words to speak? It is on the day of Pentecost, or when we receive the Holy Spirit, when we welcome the Holy Spirit in our lives and be inspired by the Holy Spirit, as many in the Catholic Church too. The charismatic movement, for example, has brought about such great renewal in the church, has converted many people to be authentic Christians and believers, and they spare no effort actually to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ to the rest of the world. That it brings all together: the death of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, the ascension of the Lord into heaven, and the coming down of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles, on you and on me. So, should we now shy away or be afraid to proclaim the good news? We are not saying that we should go around converting people or baptizing them. What we are saying is share the good news, proclaim the good news. And if people hear that good news and if they want to follow Jesus, yes, of course, they are most welcome. Then we can baptize them. But our first job is to proclaim the good news, not just through our words, but also through our actions. As St. Francis of Assisi once famously said, do everything or use everything to preach the good news. And when needed, even use words. Yes, that is our responsibility, and that is our mission. I wish you all the very best. Once again, a very happy feast of Pentecost filled with the Holy Spirit. May you proclaim the good news of the Lord to the whole creation. And if you have